tell me about the impact of aging parents and grandparents in your life?
In my life, what's happening is my grandmother has just experienced the death of her husband, my grandfather. He has been through a serious illness that was very severe for the last 5 years of his life. And she's 83 years old, and now I'm seeing my mother, who is their only child, feel that she has to take control of her mother's life. It is beyond her to realize that she has made it 83 years in her life, and she has still been functioning and able to do the daily things she needs to do, taking care of her bills and taking care of other necessities in her life. And she was quite capable of seeing that my grandfather got the medical care that he needed up until his death. But she feels that because her mother's 83 years old and she doesn't have a husband anymore, that she needs to step in and start taking control of her financial matters, of her lifestyle, of her eating patterns. And she's trying to do this at a distance. She lives in one state and her mother lives in the other state. And it's making my grandmother feel very inadequate, feeling that her only resort is to just go ahead and die with her husband. In other words, instead of helping her through her grief and making her feel like a human being and that she is a capable person, my mother's trying to take control, and I think it's more out of fear. So from her aspect in trying to deal with things, she doesn't have the respect that an older person needs. They are still capable of functioning, not as fast as we do at a younger age, but they're still able to do it within a time frame that's not harmful. And so it's very difficult on both ends.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you tell us what it's like dealing with your mom as she gets older?
Actually, yeah, with my mom, the older she gets, the better I like her. I think that's partly because I'm getting older too, and it's even possible that both of us are maturing, and our relationship has improved. I feel like, I feel some anxiety about her getting older and handling her stuff, and she has anxiety problems about that too. But so far, she's meeting the challenges pretty well, I think. I live 20 miles away. She can't just call me up and have me come over and chat. And she's 75, getting a new car, you know, handling her life. She does pretty well.
So your role at this point is primarily that of a support person?
Yeah, a cheerleader.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for returning with us. Ladies, what did you hear? Did you hear anything that struck a chord as we were listening to our guests? Anything about, they mentioned, one of them I know mentioned long distance caregiving, which is something up until now we haven't brought up.
That can be a real problem. You know, here we are in California on the edge, and a lot of times families might be a long distance away, and there are actually case management companies that will help you manage. Suppose you live in New Jersey and your mom or your dad lives here in California, that will help you manage the care for your parent even though you're thousands of miles away. They kind of operate like real estate management companies. You know, if you're an absent landlord, they'll help you figure out what resources are available. If you can't be here, obviously it's very important that you're supportive of your parents, and you know, this isn't a substitute, but these kinds of companies can be very helpful if you're a long way away, you've got your own family commitments, that transportation just isn't possible, yet you're really worried and you want to make sure that your parent's being taken care of.
That sounds like an excellent solution, actually. I know that wasn't an issue for you since your mother actually lived with you. Your siblings, though, live at some distance, don't they?
I have a sister who lives in Southern California and a sister who lives in Sacramento.
Okay, all right. So it isn't like they could commute every day and see your mom.
Of course not, exactly.
Okay.
I was just thinking when Mary was talking about how, where was she?
Yes.
I'm hearing resources now that I did not even have a clue were available. And I think for me that's the key to start this planning ahead of time. Many times these decisions are made in emergency rooms, and you think in terms of short term, but they impact lives for many years sometimes. So getting proactive around this and getting together with your siblings or family members and discussing care and how that might look. The reality is still very difficult, but at least if you have a clue of where you're headed, it avoids the last minute, sometimes not good decision-making process.
And it's also a financial decision-making process. What I'd like us to do is take a look at our next graphic, because we look at the social realities that may impact our parents as they age. Looks like we do have financial diminished or fixed income issues that may arise, maybe forced retirement, housing changes necessitated by diminished capacities, diminished mobility, maybe a need for a social network as they begin to experience the losses that you were talking about before. So in terms of planning, we're talking about financial planning, and it may be that we're going to need to have an honest financial discussion with our parents. And for many of us, talking about finances and the financial realities with mom and dad may be pretty foreign. Is that your experience?
It is. Sometimes, children have not been involved with the finances all, much as one of the person on the clip said, and entering and talking about that, what if happened, it's difficult, but like Lou was saying, it's something that's necessary. Another thing when Lou was speaking too, many times people don't know that there are discharge planners, social workers that are involved in hospitals, and when they call you up and say, well, come take mom or dad home, that you don't have to do that. You can elicit their help to help you find the placement that's going to be okay for mom or dad. You know, a lot of times we just think it's either home or a nursing home. There's lots of different options. There's, skilled care facilities, there's rehab facilities, board and care homes. There's lots of different options between home and a nursing home. And these kinds of people in these hospitals and facilities can help you know what these resources are, so that they can be, they can be resources for you to help make some of those decisions.
So part of it is just being aware that we need to ask the question.
Right, and that these people would be available to have that information for you. And another thing too, I was thinking in terms of planning, and is to know what your parents' wishes are health-wise. We now have the advanced directive laws and paperwork, and we all know about it, but we never got down to doing it. And I think that's hard to broach with your parents too, that we're concerned if anything happened that we do the right thing and what you would want us to do for you. And along with finances, I think advanced directives is something that's not real easy to bring up.
So you're talking about things like living wills?
Right, right.
Okay, yeah. That would be a difficult conversation to have.
Typically those two things go together, to tell you the truth though. If we're talking about the future and planning and money and stuff like that, it nicely feeds into like, what would you like to have happen?
Yeah.
And making sure we're respecting what their voice is in that too.
Okay. Actually, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of my grandmother, who was always very capable and in control of her world, and others if they'd let her. But part of her reality with her planning was that she had planned everything financially at least 2 years in advance. She had her funeral planned down to exactly the type of music and who she wanted to sing it. I mean, she had every single detail from the hospital bed. She even called the minister, had him come in and explain to him what he was to do for the ceremony. And so there was a level, I got to see a level with her where there was, right up until the day she died, she was still in the planning phase and had taken care of all the details, including where her furniture was going to be in my mother's home and where the pictures were going to hang. And so it's a good reminder to me that our parents do participate and can participate.
Right.
And we do need to somehow work up the courage to ask the question, because often they'll be more than willing to tell us exactly what they want.
Right.
Now, one of the women who shared in the clips that we saw talked about watching her grandmother and her mother's struggle, and she mentioned her mother's guilt, as she dealt with her mother's aging. I imagine guilt probably leads us to do a variety of things with our parents. Have you noticed that, either one of you? Did you have guilt you needed to work through when you were taking care of your mom?
Guilt of not taking care of her, guilt of putting her someplace else, guilt of what it was doing to my relationship with my partner, guilt of how it was impacting other members of the family. So yes, of course, it's something that was ongoing. And the struggle, and how, at least in my experience, the struggle of going in and out of the reality of my mother knowing where she was and knowing what was going on, the cognitive part of her, versus the times when she wasn't present.
Okay.
And when we saw the films earlier, the clips earlier, that non-expression on the face brought back some bittersweet memories.
Okay. So that is another reality, which is there are times when our parents will be able to participate and times where they won't.
Yes.
And sometimes it's helpful to have an outside person. I know someone I'm seeing now, an older person, her caretaker was her husband, and he had a heart attack. And now her young daughter, with a 24-day-old infant and a 4-year-old, is taking care of mom. And sometimes it takes an outside person to say, you know, this probably isn't the best for your family. What else can we do to get mom some help so you can take care of your family? But I think she's there because of her concern and her guilt for her mom and dad. But sometimes an outside person can support a person that's going through a guilt process and help them maybe make different decisions.
We do have another graphic about physiological problems we may encounter as our parents get older. Maybe we could take a look at some of those. Generalized physical frailty, arthritis, visual problems, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, diminished bladder control, special diets, doctor's visits, hospitalization, medication. It looks like helping our parents manage their physical changes looks like a lot of work, actually, as I looked at that list. That must be very hard. Is that difficult for you?
Yes to all the above on the list. At one point, diabetes became an issue, so I had to go and learn how to test and administer, and special diet. Vision became impaired to the point of having to make sure furniture was placed correctly and these kinds of things.
So really making great efforts to accommodate those physical changes.
Absolutely.
We're going to need to close. Ladies, thank you so much for being here tonight with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. In the weeks ahead, we will look at intervention and coming out. I'm Mary Crocker Cook. This is Bay Area Psychology. Good night.